How many people do you know that it seems like no matter how many years they have on them, they never seem to learn their lesson? They continue to make the same mistakes decade after decade after decade. And this is unfortunately very common. And I know I myself have also been guilty of never seeming to learn the lesson that I needed to take away and continuing to make the same mistakes up until the point where it became so bad that I was forced to do so. And I think a lot of people just never get those lessons. So in this video, I'm going to go over what I see as being lessons that too many people learn too late in life. And hopefully it's able to, give you a new frame of how to see things so that you can, be on the lookout for these mistakes and have them in your mind so that you can consistently make progress in whatever thing that you're trying to make progress for. So I have family members that it doesn't matter how many times they get screwed over, they just cannot seem to learn how the world actually operates. So a lot of people constantly operate from this place of how things should be. And shoulds are dangerous because with shoulds, most of the time, you're just arguing with reality. You're not coming to terms with how the world actually is. And that is one of the most damaging things that you can do, especially because we have control over very few things in our life. But what we can control is us, how we think, and the way that we show up. So the first lesson is that your actions have consequences, but more importantly, your actions have delayed consequences. So I have a family member where her husband was basically screwed over out of like small town politics stuff with their job. And after everything all happened, it had been going on for like 5 or 6 years. She ended up sending a bunch of texts to a bunch of people, right? And just going off on them. Cops end up getting called because the people that she was texting was reaching out about harassment and things like that, even though morally she was in the right. And, eventually, a few weeks go by, tensions die down, she's good. And then all of a sudden, she gets fired from her job that she's been at for 20 years because she sent those texts through her work phone. All actions have consequences. Most of the time, they're delayed, and we don't ever actually see the direct consequences of those until, you know, time down the line. It's the same thing with success for a lot of people. Success, most of the time, is a lagging indicator of the actions that you've already been doing previously. So you see a lot of this with like sexual assault allegations that do turn out to be true, because obviously there are those that are kind of aren't necessarily true, but a lot of the ones that are, you find out they were from years prior. There was a huge delay in the time between the initial action and then the consequence that resulted from it. And so I think if people can really understand that, they would start to critically think, because yeah, you might get by doing something for years even. Nobody would ever know. But at some point, those things are going to come back and bite you in the ass. And I think it's really important that people understand that. But on the flip side, you can also think about it, how can this benefit me? Because if you look, like the definition of a consequence is a result or effect of an action or condition. So you can use consequences in that case, the delay, to delay your gratification and to think about, let's say you're trying to get in shape, there's going to be a delay in the result that you get from the actions you're taking today. And I think that's what most people, why they fail like on dieting and stuff, is because they can't get into their mind like there is going to be a delay in time between when you start and the actions you're taking and the end result. And if more people go into that, that would help frame a more realistic time frame of how things can happen. So for you, you might, be trying, let's take dating. I remember whenever I was, I would get friend zoned by every girl I ever talked to. And I started doing this interpersonal work where I was like, all right, I'm going to work on my confidence. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to start working on, my emotional intelligence and all of these things that, go into being a good match for potentially somebody else and figuring out myself. And there was a couple year time frame before I really started even seeing the fruits of that labor. Like I would start to get hints that I was on the right path, but I never really got results until 2, 3 years down the line when it all finally came together. And then I realized, oh shit, all those actions that I was taking are now paying off, which then helped reframe every other goal I had. And then I took that same idea of a delayed result, of the delayed consequence, started putting it into other things. And now I pretty consistently, at least over a longer time frame, feel like I'm consistently making results, or at least I'm going to eventually get to where I want to go as long as I don't quit. But people learn way too late that there's usually a delay in whatever action you take and then the result of that consequence. The second lesson that people learn way too late is that follow your passion is bullshit advice. Something that you have to consider is, it's one of the most like talked about things on the internet. Follow your passion. If you follow your passion, you'll never work a day in your life. And I call bullshit. A lot of these influencers that are telling you that, especially on YouTube, it's rampant among YouTubers. And what I see is a lot of these young YouTubers, especially that are talking about it, and something that people don't understand, and especially these people giving the advice. Truth is, a lot of them just fell into that when they were young, and it was like just by happenstance that they ended up coming across that thing. That's one circumstance. And that doesn't happen for many people, right? And, we think it happens all the time because that's all we ever hear about. And that's known as survivorship bias. We always hear about the successes, but that's only like the 0.1% of it. We don't hear about the 99.9% of failures because nobody wants to hear about it. Nobody's interested in it. So, another factor is like your upbringing. These people had, maybe they were financially well off. Their parents supported them doing that, what they were actually enjoyed to do. Whereas for most of us, we didn't have that privilege. We grew up in a financially broken family. We grew up in a spot in a place where we weren't encouraged to follow the things that we really wanted to do. We were encouraged to do the safe thing or do the thing that our parents like thought was smarter. Because granted, they do want better for us than for them, at least most of the time. But there's this like disconnect between like what these people are saying when they say that and the reality of the situation. And the reality is not everybody comes and is lucky enough to come across that thing that they are super passionate about. And another tricky thing about passion is people are always looking for it, but passion, you can't find it. If you spend all your time looking for your passion, you're going to miss out on opportunities of things that could actually develop that sense of passion, that love for something. Passion is a feeling, right? It's the energy that you bring in to the things that you do. The problem with searching with passion is it's like this Robert Greene, the author of 48 Laws of Power, in one of his videos, he mentioned that it's like a perfume. It's just this rose tinted thing that is kind of cliche and it's empty, right? What you're really looking for is you're looking for that thing that you're willing to suffer for. Mark Manson has this saying where he's like, you find the thing that you're willing, like everything comes with a shit sandwich. Just find the one that you're willing to actually eat. And I think with finding, meaning and purpose, it's about finding the thing that you're willing to embrace the suck on and continuing to push through anyway. Because there's going to be, when you're trying to, develop this sense of passion in whatever it is, like there's going to be the times that you're bored. And the problem with only looking for that passion is that in your mind, we just associate passion with pleasure and all good things. But how many bad things for us still feel good? Getting drunk on the weekend when you're out feels fantastic. Like just getting absolutely blasted, you know, shotgunning beers, taking shots with your homies, like it feels great. And a lot of people, I would say, are passionate about going out and getting hammered on the weekends. But does that mean you're going to get any closer to the goal that you set or to the things that you actually want out of life? No, because it's empty and there's no like actual like genuine love for it. So the problem with find your passion is all that people ever look for is what feels good. But what feels good, that's what your brain wants you to think. It wants you to think that if it feels good, it must be worth it. But that's never the case because our brain is literally designed to keep us to survive and to avoid pain. And a lot of times doing the thing that's best for you and the thing that's actually going to develop that you know thing that you really want to do, it's going to hurt and it's going to suck for some time. But it's your follow your passion is just it's empty. There's nothing behind it because all you're ever going to do is look and search and you're never going to find anything while all these other awesome opportunities that could have been for you or could have unfolded before you are going to be gone. I think what we should do is redefine pleasure and start to redefine and put passion or pleasure also in doing the things that we don't want to do. And it's super important that after you do something you really don't want to do, or at least you didn't initially feel like doing, is when you're done with the thing, take into account that sense of accomplishment that you have, because that's what's going to drive you to do it again. Because then you're actually going to remember, and then you have actual proof of telling yourself that you are the person that you say you are. You have the stat, as Alex Hormozy puts it, you have a stack of undeniable proof that you are the person that you say you are. And that is confidence. And I promise you, if you start doing something that you enjoy, like that you maybe didn't enjoy doing at first, and you start to get good at it, you will find some form of passion with it. I know for me and with powerlifting, I got to a very high level. I was, had a 745-pound squat, 1,800 plus total at 220 pounds. I was at one time ranked top 10 in the world for my squat. I would say I was passionate during that 4-year span of powerlifting, but I would say I probably only actually enjoyed training about 50% of the time, maybe. Most of the time, I had to hype myself up just to get my ass to get to the gym and then go and just focus and actually just get through the workouts and do what was prescribed and what I was supposed to do and get out. But at the end of every single week, every week I completed, I was always proud of myself for it. And by the time competition day came around, I was so happy that I spent 6 to 8 months prepping for this one meet. You know, I hated having to track my weight. I hated having to track my food so I didn't overeat, so I could make my weight class. But at the end of it, it made it all worth it. Now, the other tricky thing about passion is a lot of times it's seasonal. Like you don't, sometimes you're going to be super passionate about something in your life, and then you're going to hit a point where you no longer enjoy it. At one time, I was super passionate about Assassin's Creed. Going through high school, early college, I loved Assassin's Creed. Eventually, I hit a point where I was like, I'm kind of tired of video games now. I don't really have a desire to play them anymore. And I just stopped and I was no longer passionate about it. And I think people also, like, you try to hold on to these things that at one time you liked because you feel like that's your passion. But in reality, do you actually even like it? Or are all these other outside sources telling you, oh, yeah, you love it? Like, that's what you should be doing. But do you really want to? Right? So consider, what season of life are you in? And is that passion something you really want to do? It's okay to have a bunch of different ones. It's okay to switch from time to time to new things and try new things out, because that is the only way you're going to find what you're, quote, passionate about. But I think chasing it is dumb. I think where you find it is through actually just living, taking the opportunities that are in front of you, and then just going balls out. Just do the thing the best you can with what you have. And then after a certain amount of time, if you don't like it, then you can just transition. And I think, like, with young people coming out of college trying to figure out what career they want to go into, they get so caught up in, like, oh my God, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know my passion. Dude, just job hop. Like, people say it's a bad thing and don't do it, but man, I like, from my experience, it's really not that big of a deal. People just want ballers. If you go in and work your ass off, people are going to hire you. Like, if you can communicate your value, people are going to hire you. So don't follow your passion. Just do a bunch of stuff and learn to embrace the sucky parts of it. Connect with yourself. What are you semi interested in? Chase your curiosity. Look, pursue interest and go from there. Do it for, I would say, try it for 60 days to really give it a chance. If you don't like it, go somewhere else, because you're still going to learn lessons from those other things that you tried. The third lesson is most people aren't going to help you when you need it. Your life is your life. People are concerned about their own problems. And even if they'll tell you they're going to be there to help you when you need it, they will never stick their neck out for you. It is very rare you find somebody like that. And if you do find somebody like that, cherish the hell out of them because they're not common. My family member that I previously talked about, they had reached out to help multiple times from pastures, from childhood friends that they'd known since they were, 4 or 5 years old, like people they had known forever. They asked for help. They wanted, at least some form of effort from somebody else to help them with their cause, to help talk to the right people, to in order to influence this political BS that was happening to stop. And not a single person stuck their neck out. And I think it is super important that people understand that human beings are selfish. And the truth is, nobody cares about your problems. And I mean that in the best way possible. The people that do care, like actually care about your problems, keep them. Like maintain those relationships because it's so rare. But because we are selfish, I'm guilty of not helping people too when they need it. I think we all are. And by understanding that only you can fix your own problems, as depressing as it might sound, it also gives you this sense of power. And if you can take that sense of power and take responsibility for the things in your life, at least you know that everybody else that got a handout, what you built is yours. And you can go to bed every night knowing that everything that you have done has been on your own account without the help of anybody. And you can be proud of it. And this doesn't mean don't reach out for help. Like always reach out for help, but don't expect people to actually help. Because every now and again, you are going to get a person that will actually help. I remember whenever I got laid off for the first time ever, I got my first, big boy job, salary, sales, and I killed it. Like I had the most sales that they had ever had in that time frame that I was there from previous people. And I ended up getting laid off just out of nowhere. Like was completely caught off guard. And I remember whenever I was laid off, I reached out to a bunch of people, asked for help. Like everybody said they would. They said they would help. Nobody did. Not a single person did. I ended up reaching out to actual recruiters, other places, and eventually was able to find my own way. And at the time, I hated it. But after I I got another job, started kind of working on my skills and everything, I'm more proud of it because I did have to figure it out for myself. And I was able to. And now I have a certain skill set and a certain tenacity about me that I don't think a lot of other people have. And of course, I still have the things I'm trying to do. Like I still have the things I'm trying to build. I still have, a bunch of debt from college that I'm trying to pay off. But at least I know that I have got this sense of tenacity in me that I have developed because I had to, because I had no choice. So just remember, people aren't going to help as much as they say they will. People are full of crap. But just have that expectation because when people do, you're on top of the world. And when people don't, it's exactly what you expected, as opposed to what most people do is they expect everybody to help and get nothing. And then they're left, like, what the hell? The fourth lesson is luck plays way more of a factor in people's success than what they claim. If you think about a lot of the successful people and you read like biographies and stories about, everything that happened, one, genetics. Like with athletes, like they just have killer genetics. And a lot of times they just, they can literally eat McDonald's for every meal and they're still drafted in the NBA and going to the NFL. That was luck, choose better parents. That's kind of the advice. If you want to, if you weren't quite, I wasn't good enough to go pro in baseball, should have chosen better parents. Other people, like, kind of goes back to point number 2 about these influencers talking about finding their passion. Like A lot of them grew up in supportive environments. A lot of them grew up with money. They didn't have to pay for college. So whenever they got out of college, they had zero debt and they could hit the ground running and start building up their, start building, stacking cash out the gate. They, were also able to live at home. So they didn't have expenses. Like there are so many factors that nobody is going to consider, especially like just like hitting the right opportunity at the right time. Right. It's like people that, whenever let's take, let's just take like crypto, people that threw money into, there's the stories of people that threw money into like stocks that like they didn't know if it was going to go anywhere and it just exploded. And then they were able to, they're next thing you know, they're millionaires. They're in the right place at the right time. Same thing with a lot of businesses. A lot of businesses that, started was completely by just happenstance, luck. But that's all we hear about. This goes back to the survivorship bias. It's we only hear about the success stories, but we don't hear about the 99.9% of people that fail, right? And people don't want to admit that luck plays as big of a role as it does because then it doesn't give them as much credibility in their mind. They want you to think that it was all them. There was no luck. It was just pure hard work. But there are plenty of people that work harder than they do that don't get the same result. And it's beneficial to think this way because one, it's about, you can lower expectations, but two, there are things you can do. Now you can increase the odds of you getting lucky. There's a concept, and I don't know I can't think of who originally said it, but I think Sahil Bloom on Twitter, I saw something and he broke down this idea of like increasing your luck surface area, increasing the opportunity of you to get lucky. And essentially what it comes down to is if you tell more people either what you're passionate about, what you do, or what you're trying to do, and you build your network, there's more chances of finding opportunities that work for you and that you can exploit. And so I think if people understood this earlier in their life, then they could understand like, okay, if I just, shake more hands or talk to more people, like I'm in sales, just reach out to more people and you'll get lucky. And the amount of time, like at the end of the day, I just get lucky more often than other people. And that's why, like, at least at my job, I'm a top performer because I just call more people. I reach out to more people. I have more conversations. So if people could understand that and, and like I'm naturally an introvert, right? But I don't like people you let the idea of being an introvert keep you from being social. But being social is the only way that you're going to come across even more opportunities and get luckier more often. So sometimes you got to go against what you think you should do in terms of like getting lucky. But if you can understand that like luck plays a way bigger role than you think, you'll stop feeling so bad about yourself. Because once I internalize that, I stop feeling terrible about failing at like everything I've tried to do so far. So I think it could be really beneficial if you just keep your head straight, understand that luck plays a way bigger role in things than people realize, and then you can just focus on doing the work and just doing everything you can. Because I feel pretty confident if you don't quit at something, eventually you will get lucky and earn it. Number 5, most advice that you hear anywhere is useless for you. Advice is one of those things, even for this video. Advice it's very context dependent. So, I know like just because I watch a lot of, entrepreneur videos and stuff like all that type of stuff, they always give a lot of advice. And the problem is a lot of the advice is from people that make tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars a year. The problem with listening to that is the context and their view of the entire situation is so different from where you are right now that what like their advice probably isn't the best to take based on where you're at right now. If you look at financial advice, something that like, somebody that's telling you how to invest, like, oh, invest in the S&P 500 and just stick with that forever. That is not good advice for somebody that makes $30,000 a year. The better advice for somebody that makes $30,000 a year is get a job that pays more. Get a skill that will pay you more so that you can make more money so that you can invest, right? The other thing is like, oh, I'll invest as early as possible. But in my opinion, if you have like $100,000 worth of like student loan debt, maybe the better thing to do is pay off your debt first. So, and by the way, I am not a financial advisor. Do not take this as financial advice. This is just something I do for myself and my thinking about how I see it. You know, pay off that 100K worth of debt and then start investing after that, because you can put more money into that thing, and then you're not handicapped the rest of your life trying to, burn the candle at both ends essentially. If you Dave Ramsey, I know he gets a lot of hate, but dude, he's been, I mean, he's one of the best there is in the game, and people don't like it because it's one of the hardest things to do is to just like eat your pride, live way below your means for an extended period of time, pay off your debt, and then you can stack cash, right? The other thing about advice is it's so unique to every individual, and the advice they give a lot of times is not what they did. It's what they think they should have done. And I like to use the concept of like when people outsource things for their, like, if they're, say, you're trying to start a YouTube channel, and you're like, okay, I'm going to hire a script editor and do all these things, da da da, and it's like, oh, just start this faceless YouTube channel or something like that. And it's like, well, if you have never, done a faceless YouTube video, and you don't know like the foundations, and you don't know everything that goes into it, you're probably not going to succeed because you don't know the little details about the things that, you actually need to do to be successful at that thing. I think whenever you look at, say, like elite athletes, I was watching Quarterback on Netflix with Patrick Mahomes, Marcus Mariota, and Kirk Cousins, and it was going through their season. And Patrick Mahomes at one point last season made this like insane throw, right? Like no way you sit there and you think like, oh, I'm gonna do exactly this type of throw. Like, I mean, it was weird, but he made it, and it was touchdown. And you could go up to him and you could ask him like, oh, how'd you do it? And he'll tell you like the logical side of things of like, oh, well, I just turned my body, did this thing. But that's not what he did. It's so instinctual and it's so deep into their subconscious that they don't really even know why they're good. And that's the thing too. A lot of people that are really good at things can't even tell you the exact reason why they're good at things. They'll give you like, oh yeah, the basic steps, but there are so many tiny, tiny, tiny details that people don't account for that probably are actually like the primary drivers of their success. And if you can start, to take advice with a grain of salt, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, and really think about where you are in your own life. And so then what you can do from there is you can start to filter out like, okay, well, where is this person at currently? And are they a reasonable like amount ahead of me, but not so much that all the advice they're saying like just does not matter to me. Because if you've never started a business, for instance, and you're listening to business gurus telling you how to, run your ads or, operate your business, but you don't even have a business, like none of that advice is going to mean anything to you. Like you're going to sit there and take it and you're like, oh yeah, I need to do that. But you don't. It's kind of like people will try, and I'm guilty of this too. People will try to optimize things that they haven't even started. And you can't optimize something that's not already going. So, like, take any advice that you get, really think about how does this apply to me? Is this reasonable for me to like implement now or not? And because a lot of these people will always like they'll tell you what to do or what they should have done, a lot of the stuff they learned was from just going hard. Like it's kind of like, a lot of people talk shit on hustle culture, but like there is, and I do believe that like it's not necessary, but part of me also thinks like maybe it is necessary. Maybe you do have to really grind to figure out what the most like effective things to do are for whatever that thing that you're trying to build or that thing you're trying to do. Like whenever it came to fitness and like whenever like dieting and like whenever I really figured out how to like, okay, I can actually make my body look pretty close to how I want it to. Like I still had to try a bunch of different diets. I still had to, you know, screw up diets multiple times. And yeah, there was a period of time I had to get a little bit obsessive. I had to stop drinking, period. I had to, track everything meticulously so that like now I'm in a place where I don't really have to track anymore. I mean, I do every now and again just to make sure, just to keep refreshing. Like, okay, this is, 8 ounces of meat looks like this, so that from now on, whenever I'm cooking it, I know what it is. But like, I wouldn't have gotten good at being at dieting and being able to stick to my fitness goals if I didn't like go hard and almost obsessive for a bit. And so I do think obsession can really help, like with start like you do things hard, you do things wrong until you do it right. And then once you do it right, you can start to be like, okay, now what is that like 20% that's going to get me 80%? But I don't think you can do that without having at least some period of time of just grinding and going as hard as you can. I do think that element's necessary. So, most advice is useless. Take it all with a grain of salt. And the sixth and last lesson that people learn way too late in life is your intuition is most likely wrong. A lot of people talk about, oh, just trust your intuition. It's rampant in the like spiritual space, like manifestation, all that stuff. Oh, just trust your intuition and it'll all work out. We have so many cognitive biases that are meant to keep us to survive, not to thrive. And so, because of that, our brain is set up to where we want to stay away from pain and stay exactly where we are, right? We don't want to go backwards, but we don't want to go forwards. But if the pain of going forwards is more than the pain of going backwards, then we will keep going backwards because the only thing the brain cares about is keeping us alive. Trusting your intuition a lot of times also only works whenever you're an expert or very well versed in the thing that you are doing or trying to do. I always think about this. So, like, I have got an anxious attachment style. And when I was dating, so every time I would get friend zoned or I would get ghosted by a girl, in my mind, I was like, see, I was right. She wasn't texting me back as fast, and I was on the money with her not being interested anymore. But as I've gotten space and like actually thought about it, I was like, oh my God, my intuition was wrong, but me thinking it was right is what actually drove her away because I would start double texting, triple texting. Oh, are you feeling okay today? You seem a little off. Nothing turns a girl off more than that, right? It's insecurity. You're showing your insecurity. But the trick is, I also never communicated that insecurity. So whenever I did it, it just hit hit them like a brick wall, and all of a sudden it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. So my intuition was actually wrong initially because there were a couple girls that, a couple years later, they were like, yeah, you were fine. And then all of a sudden, like all the stuff just started happening. And so I think like your intuition most of the time, like is wrong. And you probably just should not do the thing that you think you should do. Now, maybe you need to think about it more and sit back, take space, and like really analyze the situation. But I think most people like fool themselves and they think like they listen to these spiritual teachers are like, oh, just trust your intuition. It's God talking to you, whatever. And I personally disagree with that. I think instead, what you should do is just look at the evidence that you have in front of you and do your best from there. And if it is something that, if you consistently have the same problems and your intuition is always telling you, like, oh, see, I was right, maybe your intuition is wrong and maybe you need to reanalyze what you are actually doing. And most people learn this too late in life. Their intuition tells them, I should stay at this job and just ride it out. And then they get laid off and they don't have any prospects because they weren't like constantly networking with people or they haven't developed any skills or they're just kind of stuck in the same spot. Right. Or some people jump ship too early and then they miss out on they miss out. I've done that. I missed out. I waited a year too long for the opportunity I'm in now. And like, it's still a great opportunity, still plenty of like opportunity to make, good money and, hit my own financial goals that I have. But like if I would have started a year earlier, I would have been even like 10 times further ahead. But the thing is, you can't regret that. You can just understand that like it may not be smartest to listen to your intuition, You actually need to do some critical thinking about it. Write down pros, cons, whatever you have to do. But trusting your intuition blindly is most of the time a bad idea because most of the time we're not as smart as we think we are. And, you see this, I see this everywhere. There's like this quote, and it's like, the fool thinks he knows everything, but the wise person thinks he knows nothing. So if you start to question and like really dig deep and assume that you don't like have a tiny sense of humility and think like, oh, I guess I don't know everything. So what could I be missing from this situation? You're going to set yourself up way better than you would if you didn't. So those were 6 lessons people learn too late in life. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Look forward to making the next video. I love answering questions, so if you have any, feel free to throw them on. Thanks.